We're going to get started. I hope you feel checked in. I hope you feel a little bit more like you know who you're going on this journey with together. I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes. I want to start by really sincerely saying thank you. It's a bit of a ridiculous thing to put your whole life on pause for 3 days and come along to something like this that isn't something you're familiar with. In fact, it's something that's quite new, even for the citizens' assemblies, the few that have happened here, because we're trying to build a proper permanent institution that starts with this setting and that allows people from all different walks of life to contribute to the important decisions which affect us all. I'm Yaz. I will be helping you embark on this process. I'll be outlining the process that you will then fill and determine the outcomes on. I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling so thankful for all of this and all of the work that's gone into to legitimizing this sitting. So for like 2 years, people have been running assemblies to help determine what you'll be talking about here, and they'll be carrying the results forwards. And there's been so many people who have volunteered time for free to help make this thing happen. Most citizens' assemblies, they've got a large amount of money, but this is a proper grassroots one, and we're really proud of all of the help that we've got. I want us to maybe start off by taking in the room. So if you wouldn't mind just having a little look round at all of the people who are here. It's quite a special thing, isn't it, to sit across the table or across a room from people who have come from completely different walks of life. I mean, you all have different jobs. Some of you are builders, mechanics, engineers. We've got doctors, teachers. There is a renowned professor hiding among you somewhere, as well as a cider maker. Maybe they're going to be fun to make friends with, I don't know. We've got storytellers, producers, artists, songwriters, maybe a few activists, dare I say it, in the crowd. And people who've come long distances to get here from the north of Scotland to Northern Ireland. Thank you so much for making that journey. And we're only about 100 or so here. There's obviously lots of people in this country that aren't here, and it's important to remember that and to keep those voices in the room, because we all have a responsibility to try and engage on these issues that affect everybody. And so there's a responsibility there. So try and remember, although all of us do come from different backgrounds, not everyone is here, but we all have a lot of experience to offer. And we're all in this moment, aren't we, in society, where we all feel a lot of stress about the future, about our everydays. We've got a lot of worries about what's going to happen to our children, what's going to happen at the end of our lives. And we feel a bit hopeless towards our political system that doesn't seem to want to listen, and doesn't seem to actually make enough changes that we really need. We feel constrained, I think it's fair to say, by what's on the table, and we're not at the table. But this house exists because people have started to believe that they can try doing something different, and that takes a lot of courage. But we all believe that people have a lot to say. We're smart, we can figure stuff out, we can take in information. We're a lot more empathetic than social media perhaps gives us credit for. And if we find a way to join our voices up, then perhaps we are going to have some resonance. We'll be able to have some weight behind what we say that will resonate with the rest of the people we share this country with, as well as the power holders that seem to think they are quite unaccountable to us. So we're trying to build a different democracy, a better, upgraded democracy. Eventually, we want that to be a whole permanent chamber. We have a House of Lords. Why do we have unelected lords when we could just put citizens in? They could be informed and they could help hold politicians accountable. And that's maybe a long way down the journey, but it starts by establishing to people that these sorts of assemblies work, and to not ask for permission, not wait for politicians to promise to follow through on these things, but to go ahead and start building our own table, and eventually establishing a house that refuses to be ignored. So I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes. I'm just going to guide you through how we're going to be talking over these 3 days. Today's going to be about hearing the people. Over these last 2 years, we've had about over 1,000, about 1,500 people turn up to local assemblies. They've received a knock on the door. Someone's chatted to them about, the place that they live, how things are going, what sort of change that they want to see. They have a bit of a chit chat, and then they let them know there's an assembly happening down the road later that week. So they come down to it. There's facilitators at each table. These are like 40, 50-minute sessions, and the first discussion of the day is going to give you a taster of what it was like for all of those local people. But they're asked, broadly speaking, what change do they want to see? What do they want politicians to do, both locally and nationally? And they collect the results over the course of the assembly. They end up with top 5 things that all of them agree need to be done. We've then captured that information. We've tried to convert the reports from about 75 different assemblies into the reports that you'll see in your booklet. And so you're going to be engaging in that material for a while, reflecting on it. And at the end of the day, you'll be coming up with a certain number of proposals at each table that you're going to put forward for the voting on the final day. And then on day 2, we're going to dive deep into 4 main topics that have been democratically selected, again, by Assembly. So during the general election, there was a big blur of assemblies. About 33 happened, all in the space of a few weeks. And in a similar way, people tallied the top national issues they wanted to see. And then we held a big assembly that was quite similar to this, where we had about 100 people. They weren't as diverse as all of you guys. They weren't like formally selected, like with a lottery like we did here. But they were coming from different parts of the UK. And they engaged with all of those results from the assemblies, and they thought really hard about what they wanted all of you in a year's time to receive evidence on, to go into deeper depth with. So those topics will be about democracy, about democratic renewal, about taxing the wealthy and ending economic inequality, and delivering justice, economic justice. They'll be about the genocide that many people feel is happening in Gaza, about unjust war and the UK's complicity in that. You'll hear from some experts on that. And then finally, you'll hear from some esteemed scientists on the climate emergency. And what's going to happen is you're going to split into groups of 4, go into different parts of the building here in Conway Hall, and hear some of the evidence, come up with more proposals, and then everyone's going to come back together at the end of the day to engage with all of those different topics. And on the final day, you'll have a chance to amend some of those proposals in the morning, but most of that day is going to be about voting on what the proposals will be that will make up this People's Charter. Now, we don't know what's going to be in the People's Charter. There's lots of different scenarios. It's up to you as a collective group to do the difficult work of finding the right balance. Because you may feel throughout this process for moments that you're not qualified, that you don't know enough about these topics. And certainly, more time, of course, would always benefit, more expertise would benefit those inputs. But what I want to suggest is that you do all have within you what you need to decide what should be done. You are all the experts in your own lives. You know how impacts affect you all. You have had experiences with many other people in your communities that you can draw on. And we are going to trust you to find that right balance of selecting proposals for this charter that are either specific policy changes or broad visionary goals or somewhere in between. It's for you at your tables to find that balance yourselves. And it's not the be-all and end-all. It's just the start. So I want you to remember that this house exists to establish a space for these conversations to take place. And so you can't fix every problem in 3 days, certainly not. But at the moment, our country affords us 1 day every 5 years. And we can do better than that. And there's only 2 choices, exactly. So, if you don't mind, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. I want to introduce some of us. So I'm hosting. My name is Yaz, as I mentioned. We have Molly here, who's also going to help us with the hosting over the course of this session. Susan, who's on this side of the room, is our accessibility rep. If you ever have any problems, if you want to know any more about how to use the space, then please let her know. We have someone on hand to help with any mental health support and a quiet room upstairs. So I really want to emphasize that throughout this whole sitting, over all of these days, no session is more important than your general well-being. And these can be, thank you, these can be quite, it can be quite emotionally overwhelming. It might surprise you sometimes to grapple with these big issues. But at any moment, you are more than welcome to step out, go to the quiet room on the top floor, go to the Red Lion Square outside, take a few minutes for yourself, and then come and sit back in. And that's totally, totally cool. I want to also introduce you to Tara, who's going to be filming a lot of these sessions. We should have checked with you at the door if you don't want to be filmed. We're going to still capture stuff, but we'll make sure not to share anything without your permission. Tara is at various moments throughout the session going to tap people on the shoulder and invite them to go to a little interview setup up here and give you the chance to testify for like 5 minutes on how you're feeling about what's going on. So please, take up that opportunity if you would like to. But again, it's not compulsory. Just do what you feel able to. I'm going to emphasize something again. This is your process, and you own it. And we are all here in service to you. We all have to go along with the process, and it may not be perfect. But if you find things that are frustrating about how the days are going on, you can notice that in your notebook, on page 12, actually it's on page 13, but that spread, there is a feedback QR code. And I'm going to draw your attention to it because we really, really want you to help us make this as good as it can be for this sitting and for the future. So if you find something that isn't working for you, or a conversation that isn't resolved, or even a conflict that you want some help addressing, then please fill in that form. It will just take 5 minutes. We will have people looking at it throughout these 3 days. If you need some support or help, then we'll try and come up to you. Or you can leave that anonymous if you would like as well. But assemblies are a bit of a new thing, right? They're a different way of getting along and talking to each other. Often in our political system, you've got these two sides and they're kind of shouting at each other and it's all a bit of a confrontational debate. Assemblies are slightly different because they're more about the fact that everybody has a different perspective and that all voices are going to be equal. And so we have to take some time to reflect. Each of us will have the space to share, but obviously because we're at tables with 5 or so other people, most of our time is going to be listening. And we're not going to be able to, in all times, convince people of our argument, but that's cool, that's totally cool. That's not what we're here to do. Maybe if we had longer, we'd be able to reach more of a unified resolution, but we're here to listen to views that we wouldn't normally encounter and reflect on them, and then use that knowledge, integrated knowledge, to then vote on the final day. But it's important not to get too caught up on trying to convince everyone else of your points. Just try and articulate your own points and reflect on others. And it will all sort of sink in. And it's important to take care when you're listening, to remember that you've got experience, to draw from your experience, accept the complexity of these issues, accept the uncertainty of them. If you have criticisms, criticize the ideas, not the people behind them, and try and remember to do that. And then there is a group agreement. Principally, we all have to go along with this process because that's how we're going to end up with a vote at the end. So please listen to your facilitators. You've met your facilitators at each table. Do you want to put your hands up, guys? Just have a little wave. Thank you so much for all of you spending so much time studying the timetable, trying to do everything possible to make these tables work and for people to have their voices heard. I'm going to quickly summarize the main elements of this group agreement, which they'll take you through in a minute. But the key point is that everyone is welcome here, and we have to respect that. Even if we come from very different backgrounds and we have very different beliefs, everyone is welcome. The second is that all voices are equal, which means that not only will, when we start these group discussions, everyone is going to have the same short amount of time to speak before the back and forth, but it's for all of us to really try and remember for ourselves that we're here to establish an equality between our voice, political equality. So if you notice somebody or yourself speaking too much, then try and take time, be aware of that, pause, let somebody else speak. My favorite quote about democracy is that good democracy brings the quiet people out. And so if you notice there's people at your table who aren't contributing as much, they of course have plenty to say that would be valuable, and please encourage them to share. And then finally, not all behaviors are welcome here. So if you do things that are abusive or cross a line, we'll take you out for a minute, we'll try and talk to you. We want you to be involved in this process as much as possible. We're totally cool with emotions being high, and we want to help you process all of that. But there will come a point where we may have to ask you to leave. That's something that's possible. So I just want you to be aware of that in advance. All right. And then finally, one other thing about this, we're using a technology called DemBrain. Now, this is a large language model, which means it's artificial intelligence, quote unquote. There's going to be a phone or a laptop at each of your tables, maybe two. And it'd be really helpful if you might be able to offer some of your technology to do this too. You can use it to get a transcript if you have trouble hearing. But it's going to capture the conversations that you have. It's going to help summarize the whole room and compare where different tables agree, where different tables disagree. We're going to be using the projector to talk through some of those summaries. It's not there to replace your voice. It's just there to help you keep track of what the whole room is discussing. And some of your tables are going to have the ability as well to discern the whole history of your conversations over the course of the 3 days if you want some support precipitating your proposals for the charter. It's really important to emphasize that all of the transcripts of the conversations that are taken by DemBrain are going to be deleted in 30 days. They're stored on secure EU servers. DemBrain is a very credible, up-and-coming organization. It's been funded by the EU. It's been used in citizens' assemblies before. And we have an independent observer here who's going to take note of how DemBrain is being used, how it gets in the way of the human connection or amplifies it. And they're going to study that. And would be really interested in your feedback. I think you may have signed a consent form, but they'll have more to say. In fact, I'm going to invite Isabella, if you don't mind, to come in and help us check in and do a little bit of an early exercise to practice some active listening skills to settle into the way we'll be deliberating together.